Yeah, my introduction into wood turning was one of always loving to work in wood. And I was down at the Lost Gardens of Helligan many years ago with my wife, and there was a guy in a barn, and he had this ancient old lathe, and he was turning out these immense, great big natural edge bowls. And I stood and I watched him for the best part of an hour, and I said to my wife, I'd love to do that one day. She said, yeah, why not? Do it. So sadly she passed away. So as part of my journey, I took myself off down to Axminster, and I did a week-long course with Colwyn Way at Axminster, and he's going around the various people saying, so what do you guys really want to do? So I'm going, I want to do big bowls, big natural edge bowls. And to this day, I've not done a big natural edge bowl. I've done all kinds of other things, all kinds of weird things, most of which Paul will agree normally come with a light bulb and a lead and a plug, because I like doing them. But my first ever natural edge vessel, whatever you want to call it, was this. I had no idea what the piece of wood was. I think it's something like a hawthorn. It tried to kill me in several ways, because these bits flying around were actually quite dangerous, and I managed to cut my hand open a couple of times doing it. And the other thing was that I had limited tools, so there it was on the lathe, and there's me down here with the tool rest, and I'm trying to look to see what I'm doing, and I've treated myself to this scraper. So there I am, looking, yeah, and it caught. And that went under my chin and nearly knocked me out. Not once, but twice. Then I realised that what I needed to do was stand a lot further back, get rid of all of this, and keep my head out of the way. So it was quite an introduction. And as you can see, I didn't turn it very thin. This was one of my very early pieces that I did, probably 8 years ago. It's quite thick. It's not finished off particularly well. And being natural, it's split incredibly badly, but it's still one of my favourite pieces. I love it. Fast forward a few years, I did make a nice big, I saw a video of a bird's mouth bowl being turned. I thought I'd give it a go, so I tried it, and it was quite a large piece. And it sat on my shelf for a couple of years, and then I got involved with the Henley Arts Trail and managed to sell it. So I haven't got that to show you. The next piece that I did was a piece of boxwood, which I bought from the club one night. Well, I think Malcolm strong-armed me into buying it. And that's the result. It's a huge, huge piece of box. The bark didn't stay on, so I've just made the best of it. And it was round. As it's dried from John's demo last week on green wood, it all shrinks and moves. And now if you run your hand around there, there's all these ridges, which is quite interesting. It just makes, I don't actually particularly like the shape of it, but it's quite an interesting piece. So then, from there, Paul said, do you want to do a demo, Justyn? And I went, okay. He goes, what do you fancy doing? I said, don't know. He goes, I said, I'll tell you what, I'll have a go at a bird's mouth bowl. What's one of them, he says. So the idea of it is that you turn it natural edge, and that is supposed to replicate or represent a bird in a nest with its beak wide open. So that's where the term bird's mouth beak bowl comes from, or bird's mouth bowl comes from. So I hadn't done one for a long time. So at the weekend, bear in mind I haven't turned much at all this year, threw a piece of magnolia onto the lathe, which had come from my neighbour's garden when I took their tree down for them. So it's still quite green. And I started, oh, I'm quite happy with that, until I went through it. A couple of swear words. So I threw another piece of wood on, and I ended up with, where's the other one? That shape. They're not finished pieces. They were literally just practice pieces. So anybody who wants to put their finger in there and go, oh, it's not finished off very well in there. Yeah, I know it's not. It's literally just sanded in the bits that I can get my fingers to about 120. It's just to show the form, the shape. So that's a slightly unusual sort of footed bit. This one is even chunkier. It was threatening to fall apart on the lathe with the splits and the cracks. But this is like a pot belly one, really. So I'll put those on the table so people can just have a look in the break. And I thought, I've never done one of these before. So you take a bit of a log, like that, and then you turn it. So you end up like that. Does that make sense? So quite easy. It's quite easy wood to turn, particularly when it's green. But it's also quite technical, and you also got to keep your hands out of the way a lot. So, with that in mind, I'll make a start. So I've got 2 or 3 different bits of wood. And what I've worked out is, if you've got a round piece of wood, looks okay. If you've got a oval piece of wood, the actual sort of bird's mouth on the top is slightly more accentuated, just looks a bit better. And if you've got a piece of wood that's got an angle to it, you end up with a slightly higher wing, as it were, on one side than the other. So this is where it all could go wrong. What piece should I turn?
So how quickly can you hold that massive piece?
Say again?
How quickly can you hold that?
Reasonably. Even if I don't get the hollowing finished, I can get the oval one. So what I'm going to use is a 4-prong drive straight into the bark. It can tear the bark out. You just need to keep tightening it. So, as most people will do, go around the entire chuck, tightening each section so that it doesn't move. And then for the live centre, I don't like using points, so I use a ring drive, so it spreads the load. With a point type centre, it pushes it apart and it doesn't really give a very good hold at all. So, it's going to be guesswork. What I do is I actually tap the 4-prong drive into the wood like that, and then just retighten it. And if it does start to slip, take it out, clear out the bark, and then it'll get a better grip. So, as always, health and safety, get the tool rest as close as you possibly can without it catching. I normally use a respirator type visor, but it's too noisy. So you might want to move back. So here we go. Let's try. Always start the lathe on slow speed. Everybody happy? There's going to be some bark flying off of this. And basically it's just to try and get it as round as quickly as possible, well not as quickly as possible, but as safely as possible. And it will take a little while.
Justyn, we're not hearing very well because your mic is outside. Is it possible to put it on your collar?
That's right.
Inside the thing.
Yeah. Okay. Is that better?
Yeah.
Cool. It's getting frightened. So that's it, starting to slip a little bit. I think I know what's happened. So, as you can see, it's just made a bit of a mess in there. So we will clear that out. And I think that moved, the 4-prong drive just moved back slightly. Feels so nice when you get it pretty much round and all the jumping goes away. So at some point before you put the wood on, you decide what's going to be the bottom and what's going to be the top. So this has got a bit of a imperfection in it there. So this is going to be the bottom. I'm going to turn the tenon on the bottom. Thanks, Jerry. So yeah, I'll just do a little bit more. Okay, I'm reasonably happy with that. I'll probably leave it at that. So some of this discoloration will still be there, but it adds a little bit of a feature to it. So I'm going to start trying to round the bottom off to then, I'm going to try and do it so that it's the pot-bellied or pot-bottomed one. Not unhappy with that. Okay, so I'm going to start trying to form some of the shape for the top. So what you need to do is bring it in and then back out. Getting a very interesting wobble on that now. So I've got some flats on here, so I need to make sure that those flats have gone and you get a nice sort of sharp edge. The reason I'm getting the wobble, I'm guessing, is because I'm very close to the pith and it may be a little bit harder, but I'll persevere. I need to start forming the tenon now. So get rid of some of this excess. Okay, I'll call it a day at that. Don't want to push my luck. So push in the middle. So wet wood, this will crush down quite a lot. So it's always worth checking and rechecking every now and again. So for drilling, speed down, probably around about 500-600 RPM is adequate. Hold on to the Jacob's chuck so it doesn't spin. Don't need to go too fast with this. This is cutting quite nicely because of the type of the wood and the fact that it's so green. So at some point I've got to decide how deep I want this. So pull that out for now. So I reckon I need to try and get to about 130 mil. Some people may be quicker doing it with a hollowing device, but I just find I'm more comfortable doing it this way. Double check this. This is literally just going to be a practice piece. I'm not going to spend masses of time on it. So I will hollow it, and it's going to remain quite thick. And I will probably leave the tenon on there and maybe go back to it once it's dried out a bit. So then you go to your most preferred hollowing tool. And I've tried several, and some have benefits over others. This is an Axminster one with a very small, very aggressive little cutter in it. So call it the wee beastie. And the other thing to do is to mark with masking tape pretty much the limit of where you want to go to. Also, hold rather than presenting the tool with the cutter flat, present it with the cutter 30 to 45 degrees over. So at home I've got a compressor, and I would blow the debris out. I'm kind of going in, turning, going sideways, pulling it out, and then going back in again. So yeah, what I'm going to do now, won't bother with any more hollowing. I'll try and get this finished and get it to a nice even wall thickness before it goes into the belly. Okay, so that's developing quite nicely. And what I'm trying to do is mimic the same angle that's on the outside on the inside. All times, keep your fingers away from the flying bits. I'm going to go to a slightly bigger gouge to keep my hands out of the way a bit. And then we'll go back to a bit more hollowing. That's what happens when you don't present the tool at an angle. So with all hollowing, it's a bit of guesswork really. So the one thing I don't want to go is go too mad. This is called the walking stick. Do you remember that one? So do you remember this, Malcolm? So I was with Malcolm at the D&M tool show, and I was just drawn to it. I couldn't help myself. I had to buy it. It was second hand, so. This makes a lot of noise. So I can feel that as I'm releasing some of the wood, it's actually changing the shape, which is why it was bouncing quite a lot as I was coming out. Close enough. Who's got big hands? You're not allowed to touch it, all right? Okay, I'm not going to go too mad. I'm demonstrating the basics, how I do it. I'm sure there's plenty of other ways that people do it. And what I'm going to try and do is I'll actually try and finish the outside a little bit better, but I'll leave the tenon on simply so that I can readdress it. It's going to cause an awful lot of tear out. I'm just going to try a skew as a sort of shear scraper, see what happens. Yeah. And if that doesn't work, I'll use Malcolm's favourite trick, the brick. This is where you need to be very careful of your wings. You don't want to get too brutal. I'm not 100% happy with the curve on that, but you can spend forever doing it. So that is pretty much the basis of how I turn a bird's mouth bowl. The other thing that I do is when you are going to rechuck something is mark the position of where it is in the chuck. And just for simplicity, I always go between 1 and 4, numbers 1 and 4, and just put a pencil mark down in there. And then when you rechuck it, you'll also find that it tends to go into the same grip marks that are already on there. When I was turning this one, and I wanted to get the tenon off, I actually made myself this, so that goes in there like so, and I just used that as a jam chuck. I just brought the centre up, turned away the tenon, and just finished it off with sandpaper. Yeah. Always leave a centre mark when you do your tenon. Sort of always have a mark in there. So yeah, that's. Thank you. The second attempt. Going to try and turn this log into that shallow winged bowl. So as you can see, that's basically how it was turned from a piece of log. So it's got quite a large knot there. Don't know how that's going to affect things, but it probably won't make turning the top of it out very easy. So what I'm going to do is make that the bottom. That will have the tenon on it, and away we go. But what I would just do is find a centre. I do work in chaos in my own shed, so I've got stuff everywhere. Then I have a purge every now and again. A screw chuck would possibly be less risk of it coming loose. Yeah. Because this is so soft and fibrous, it tears it up anyway. I did have a go with a force and a bit, and it's just like, I'll just keep tightening it. All right, so make sure everything's locked down and tight. I say if I was using a point drive, it would just open it up. So always go with a ring drive just to spread the load. Yeah, I've got a step centre here for the drive, but it just, if it slips, it just cuts a lovely little washer of bark, basically. So the 4-prong drive was the most sort of secure. Okay, so speed right down when you're in a new piece of wood. I'm going to bring the little rest down a tiny bit. There we go. And oh, sounds like a propeller already, doesn't it? This is quite interesting when you start. Make sure the gouge is nicely locked in to your side. I'm going to have to clear the 4-prong drive. So it's just chewed it up and created a cushion. And try again. What I can do, potentially, is swap it around Again, big guesswork here. Okay, it's good enough for the moment for what I need to do, because what I need to do now is start forming the tenon on the bottom. So I'll try and get some of this wood away off of here. Come on. Okay, I'm going to have to move the tool rest because it's getting a bit too far away down here. I've still got a bit of a flat here. That side's okay, so it must have moved slightly when I re-chucked it. But okay, I can carry on with that. That should do. Because I'm not having to hollow deep, I'm going to go straight in with a gouge and just hollow it out from the face. Always remember with these, you've got very uneven flying points, and just try remember always to keep your hand behind the tool rest. So I need to concentrate really on getting the shape right on here. Yeah, getting close. Getting close. But I've got to be so careful now that I don't actually go too close to the bottom, otherwise I'll end up with a funnel. So I'm going to have to revert to a scraper. If my hand is on the rest, as long as it doesn't go beyond the front of the rest, I'm okay. I'm okay. The lightest of cuts. And to be honest, it's quite punky, there's quite a bit of tear out. So I would now revert to my trusty DeWalt. Okay, so it needs a lot more work. It needs a lot more sanding here. This probably will be just a practice piece because it's got some very, very punky wood here. But again, that's just hopefully a demonstration of how I would go about doing a winged bowl. It's not as long as I'd hoped. I had hoped for, that length. Don't go there. Thank you.